Hello everyone, and today I'll be making a little squishy figure of this little adventurer type of character that I made. It's gonna be like a berry or original character, trying to do like a Mochi Squishy style. So right now I'm trying to like hot glue the base of this figure to the plastic board, but I think something's wrong with my hot glue gun, so I'll have to get a new one soon. So this basically happens when you have a hot glue gun and you don't leave it standing upright. If you leave it laying down on its side, some of the glue gets trapped inside the gun and it leads to this where it becomes very difficult to squeeze out any glue through the tip. Next, I'll be using this Let's Resin brand mold box. I like it so far because it's reusable and you just need to hot glue the base and put some office clips on the sides. The only bad part is it's very short, so I could tell even looking at this tiny figure that I made that I'm gonna need another layer to put on top. So far I'm just gonna be hot gluing the base and then add another layer. So right now I'm just gluing around the perimeter of this mold box to make sure no silicone leaks out from the bottom. It's very important there's no gaps or holes and openings when you do the base of the mold box. Next, I check to make sure the figure is centered inside the mold box so that the silicone mold walls would be thick and not too thin that it breaks. It's important the figure is centered for that stability in the mold. And then now I'm just putting another layer of this reusable mold box because it's too short as is. Now I'm just going to be pouring my mold making rubber, which is, right now I'm using Smooth On Dragon Skin 10. It's a little bit soft, but it's good for when you're making tiny molds and you're just gonna cut them open. And I'm trying to avoid not pouring directly on top of the figure, which is a little hard because this is a small mold. But generally you don't want to pour silicone directly on top of the figure because you'll trap air pockets. You want to pour in a corner and let it seek out its levels and rise up normally. After I poured all the silicone, I just tap the sides and usually tap the mold against the table to help the air bubbles rise up to the top. You want to do this especially if you don't have a pressure chamber, because tapping on your table or banging the sides or any vibration helps shakes the air bubbles to the surface. So right now I'm just going to be putting it in my pressure chamber to get rid of any excess bubbles. It's really good for mold making in general, but it is very expensive, so I would recommend not getting this unless you're really serious about mold making and you plan to make a lot of molds, especially tiny ones like these. So now that the mold is cured, I'm just going to remove the hot glue off the midway point and the base of the mold box before removing all the reusable panels. Now that the mold is free from those reusable panels, I'm gonna just cut the flash with some scissors. You can also use an X-Acto knife and just cut off the flash against the cutting mat, but I prefer scissors because it's a little safer than using X-Acto knife. So just a quick heads up that all the materials that I use will be listed in the description below, and I'm an Amazon affiliate, so any purchases made through those links also helps out this channel as well. Also, if you have any questions about your own projects that are similar or any questions regarding mold making in general, you are welcome to ask them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my abilities. So right now I'm just doing what I usually do with cut molds, where I just make short jagged cuts, and then I make the opening a zigzag pattern so that it locks into place. You don't want to make a straight line or even long cut because it won't lock in as smoothly and it can shift around the opening. You want like short jagged lines and a zigzagged opening. Unfortunately, this method doesn't preserve the original clay sculpture, so keep that in mind when you make molds like these, that your sculpture won't be preserved very well. You can always glue it back together when you pull it out, or you could just recast it in resin, which is more durable anyway. So right now I'm just cutting clean across it from between the legs and between the arms so I can pull out the figure quickly and easily, and this involves breaking the clay figure, unfortunately. So I got most of it out, except the little hair leaves on the top of his head. So I'll just pull out those tiny pieces with a blunt clay tool. Next I'll be using mold release. This is called Man's Ease Release 205. It's a liquid form and it's designed for silicone and silicone casting. And next I'm going to be using Ecoflex 10. It's very soft and it's a 2-part mixture, and it usually has a cure time about 4 hours. So after pulling this out of my pressure chamber, I forgot to add that I use a bit of mica powder to color the silicone red, and it gives it a shiny, shimmery effect as well. And now I'm just gonna carefully demold it, since Ecoflex 00-10 or whatever is very soft silicone and you can rip it easily if you're impatient. So I'm having a bit of trouble demolding this because I didn't put enough mold release, so I should emphasize it's very important to put a generous amount of the Man's Ease Release 205 in there, because silicone and silicone like to stick together and it's very hard to separate them without it. It's almost impossible, so you definitely need a lot of mold release to prevent stuff like that from happening. So once again, I'm going to use my blunt clay tool to just fish out the tiny pieces, like the little leaves on the top of his head. Like how I got rid of those tiny pieces out that are still stuck in the mold. You want to use a blunt tool because you don't want to cut or damage the casting or the mold. Once it's out, I just cut the little vents and tubes with my cuticle scissor. For painting details on silicone, I had a whole video dedicated to it, but basically you just need Psycho paint, and then you need Novocs to dilute the paint, and then you can use either Mica Powder or you can use Silpig to color the paint that you're going to use to paint the figure. And with that, he is pretty much done, and I appreciate everyone for coming by, and thank you for watching, and see you later.